It's Charles Barkley with Wayfair. It's outdoor season, and my patio setup better be ready to play. That's where Wayfair wins. Patio seating, umbrellas, and grills, all delivered fast and easy. Shop wayfair.ca now.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Welcome back. David Hertel in for Elias. Well, the parliamentary session in Ottawa is wrapping up this week, and one bill is garnering a lot of attention. Bill C-11, formerly known as the Act to Enact the Consumer Privacy Protection Act and the Personal Information and Data Protection Tribunal Act, and to make related and consequential amendments to other acts. It's quite a title. It's quite a mouthful. Really, Ottawa should think about the title of their bills. Way too long here. So this bill's been controversial since its inception. Is it going to protect consumer privacy or limit freedom of speech? A lot of major questions coming out of this bill. To help us make sense of it, Jay Goldberg is the Ontario and Interim Atlantic Director at the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. He's with us this morning. Thanks for joining us, Jay.
Great to be with you.
So, Jay, tell me more about this bill that has this impossible title. What bottom line, what is it attempting to do here?
Well, what the government says they want to do through this bill is promote Canadian content. And the way they're going to do that is to give the CRTC the power to decide what you and I see on our news feeds, on streaming feeds, based on whether or not they consider that content to be Canadian. So what that means is the government is going to be messing with our news and streaming feeds, pushing to the top content that they consider to be Canadian, and pushing to the bottom content they don't consider to be Canadian. But of course, one big worry with that is that it's up to the government to decide what counts as Canadian. And then down the line, if you're giving government bureaucrats the power to filter what we see online, can they use that for another reason? If the government, for example, wants to quiet their political opponents, could they give those instructions to the CRTC? So these are some of the really big questions with Bill C-11, and it's a very dangerous bill.
So this bill is basically the quote-unquote new and improved version of Bill C-10, which died before the last election. That was the federal government's failed attempt to regulate the big internet giants, Google and the like. And so on the other hand, Jay, isn't it a good objective to try to regulate these tech giants?
So I think there's an important distinction because the chair of the CRTC, Ian Scott, he says that the CRTC under this bill will be given the power to regulate not just big companies, not just Netflix or Amazon Prime, but the ability to regulate posts from everyday users like you or me. And so that's incredibly concerning. User-generated content is included in the bill. The government's tried to say it's not, but the CRTC is going to get the power to do so, and they're saying it's in the bill. So it's really important to think about the fact that they're saying they want to regulate these giants, but they're actually going to regulate individual users. And on the flip side of that, when you're talking about regulating these giants, the only thing they're talking about regulating right now is telling these providers or these streaming services how much Canadian content they need to push and in what order they should push it. So it's not really regulating for the sake of guarding against online harms. It's not really regulating for the sake of guarding against hate speech. It's simply regulating for the sake of pushing what the government considers to be Canadian content.
So, again, the CRTC regulates traditional media, like, for example, CJAD 800, television, so traditional media. And so the major tech giants are not currently regulated, Jay. So I'm wondering, in terms of, because some of the proponents of the bill are saying, well, this is a good idea because it will force the tech giants to invest in Canadian content like the major private TV sectors do, the media networks do. Isn't that something that we should be supporting in some way?
Well, I think it's important to note that first, the Canadian television and film industry is thriving. In 2020, there was $6 billion of foreign investment in Canadian film and television, which was a record, and that's during the pandemic. You can certainly talk about whether or not it's a good thing to find ways to encourage these big tech companies to invest more in Canadian content, and there are ways to do so. But the big problem with this bill is that it regulates as well user-generated content, and it hands the government the power to filter what companies or what individuals say or see online. And so that's the big concern. If the government really wants to take a very narrow approach, they would cut out any regulation of user-generated content, and so far the government's refused to do that. So, if the goal really is only to regulate these huge giants and, push Canadian content, they can narrow the bill, and so far they've refused to do so.
Speaking with Jay Goldberg of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. So, Jay, where's the bill at right now in Parliament? What's the status of the bill?
So this is fascinating because, Elizabeth May, former Green Party leader, who says, obviously was never a big fan of Prime Minister Stephen Harper. She said the government is pushing this bill through Parliament in a way that she never even saw under the Harper government. She said this was the biggest violation she's seen in her time in the House of Commons. Essentially what happened is that the Liberal government forced the Canadian Heritage Committee, which is the committee tasked with studying this bill, to vote on over 150 amendments without any of the members having had the time to read the amendment. So they were just voting based on partisan affiliation. So that's something that's very concerning and very dangerous. The bill is supposed to be voted on this week, potentially today in the House of Commons, but then it's going to move to the Senate. And we know that it was in the Senate where Bill C-10 died last summer when the election was called. Senators have said they're going to give this a much better look than what the House of Commons has done because the Trudeau government is pushing it through. So the fight is certainly not over. There's going to be a vote in the House of Commons that should pass. But then the question will move to the Senate, and they're going to consider the bill for the next several months and hopefully present some very reasonable amendments to make this bill more palatable.
So what would be a reasonable amendment? What would be a solution to answer your concerns?
Well, one really good amendment would be to completely exclude user-generated content. And that was actually an amendment that was proposed by a Green member of Parliament in the House of Commons, and it was rejected by the government. The government voted against it. So the government keeps saying they want to push Canadian content, regulate these big users like Netflix or Amazon Prime. They can make that argument, but there should be absolutely no reason, according to their logic, why they're including user-generated content in the content that's going to be regulated. So number one, the best thing to do for amendment number one, cut out user-generated content. That's what pretty well all of society is asking for, and the Trudeau government needs to listen to that.
Jay Goldberg of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you.